Before we get started on the next segment of the show, I do have a little bit of a song to sing. Justin, are you ready?
Oh, I hope it's very patriotic.
That's very patriotic. Oh, say, can you see beautiful balls? It's around the 4th of July, and you're not going bald. Justin, you are not going bald like an eagle, right?
I mean, I have hair on my head, but obviously when it comes to other balls, other round things, I would like them to be bald just because it makes the experience just much more smoother for your, SO, aka significant other. So that's like the most important part about that.
Luckily, our friends over at Manscaped want to make sure that your stars and stripes are spangling on America's favorite day. Their products are beautifully designed to have your body looking mint from head to toe for any beach, pool, or late night festivities alike. Join over 4 million pube patriots worldwide who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer for you: 20% off and free worldwide shipping with our code TKO at manscaped.com. This right here is the American dream. Justin, we always have to talk about it. Any ball related mishaps in your lifetime using ordinary shavers?
It's like, obviously when you're growing up, you're a young boy, teenager, and all of a sudden you're like, I guess
what's
this
the
area
deal
down there? It's getting like messy. It's like, so now I need like a haircut down there, right?
Yeah.
So obviously I was not taught this. I just thought it made sense to use a razor that I use for my face to just trim down there.
We've all done that.
Right. So there was no YouTube back in the day. So I just went at it. Right. And unfortunately, I kind of scratched it up a little bit. I definitely, hurt it a little bit, and it definitely hurt my confidence a bit. Right. It was one of those things where I'm just like super scared and super worried because that's family's jewels right there.
Right. You want to be able to parry any incoming damage down there. Right.
That's what I'm saying. I'm trying to be neat and clean, just like my gameplay. And I think Manscaped does a great job with that.
Yeah, with the Lawnmower 4.0, that's the 4th generation trimmer. It features cutting edge ceramic blades to reduce grooming accidents thanks to their advanced skin safe technology. And Manscaped also comes with their crop preserver, their weed whacker, ball deodorants, crop revival ball toners, all that great stuff. And even a nice travel bag that it's probably the nicest travel bag I ever have. So,
you know what the craziest part about this is that it also comes with performance boxer briefs, right?
True.
And legit, no lie, I don't know if you want to see it, but I'm actually wearing the briefs right now, like straight up.
I will take your word for it, sir. It's time to take your freedom bells to the next level by going to manscaped.com and get 20% off plus free shipping with our code TKO. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and use our discount code TKO. Unlock your confidence this 4th of July with the right tools for the job with Manscaped. Bold stripes, bright stars, and beautiful balls. Thanks again to
Treat your balls.
Thanks again to Manscaped for sponsoring today's episode. Gentlemen, if you were to, I don't know, collect all your fighting game memories into one piece of software, I don't know, some type of collection, a fighting game collection perhaps, do you have any ones that jump straight to your mind? Hello, this is TripleKO.
Hi, TripleKO.
Forgot to announce.
Hello.
Wait.
Hello, Maximilian.
What are we collecting? We're not collecting Pokemon? It's not Pokemon? Catch them all?
No,
Justin.
Mr. Justin Wong.
You fool.
you should have worked Pokken in there because that's a fighting game, kind of, and Pokemon together.
I think there's only one clear answer for this that, I think only I have considered. And it's how in the hell is it 2022 and we have not got Rise of the Robots 1 and 2 in a collection yet? Like,
wow.
When will the robots rise? God damn it.
You make light of that, but I could definitely see, you ever see Rise of the Robots? Actually, I see them getting a cartridge re-release.
A re-release
Yeah.
Like, those things that are for like 20 people. Yeah. Like Double Dragon and Battletoads, not on the arcade 1-up that has all the Battletoads. It was announced for a brief period, but then that came out on a green NES cartridge, and I'm like, that's for someone.
Could happen.
It could happen.
So,
what about a poverty fighting collection? Would you want that? Is that what? Dude, what you
I'm
want in
making
life?
that. I'm making that right now. I have the project files.
Yeah,
right
there has to
me.
be like an Arcana Heart, like 1 through 50, however many Arcana Hearts there's been on a big collection, right? That isn't PS2 or something.
I don't think there is.
Think so.
Currently there is no collection for Arcane Heart. You have to buy them separately.
So
Steam.
that's actually a great point. Is some of the stuff that is like shocking that like how the hell have these games not been put into a collection of some kind? Like what's holding them up? And then also,
you mean like Virtua Fighter?
And what's the polar opposite of Virtua Fighter as well? What's the other 3D fighting game
Tekken?
series? Yeah, that
Dead
is
or Alive.
That too. Like
Guilty Gear.
Dead or Alive actually has a collection, a pretty decent one. It's on the original Xbox, but yeah,
it's the Ultimate thing, right?
Yeah. DOA Ultimate has like 1 and all the different versions of 1 through 2 and 3.
Wasn't that though redone? There were actually remakes redone in the DOA 3 engine.
I've played those, and yeah, they're full ass effort, budgeted like remakes in many ways. They're not the original Saturn version and PlayStation version and goofy stuff like that because DOA 1 was made on the VF2 engine.
Yeah,
no, they like remake those games to play as similar as possible and look good.
That's cool. That's like a Virtua Fighter Ultimate Showdown before Ultimate Showdown.
Kinda, yeah.
Like remaking a game in an engine when you didn't necessarily need to, but it was cool that you did. There was a Tekken collection too. I remember there was a PS2. It's a Namco fighting collection or something, and it was like Tekken. It was like Tekken 4 and 5 together.
No
Wait,
way.
really?
No, there's no way that exists in the US.
No, you know what this was? This was just a repackaged box, and it had like the 2 games inside. That's what I'm thinking of. But we had a mom and pop's video game store called Game Buzz. Oh, God rest your soul, Game Buzz. Max, Justin too, I think you'll find this funny. A mom and pop's game store that got so popular in a condensed downtown area, they opened up 3 or 4 stores in like 2 or 3 mile circumference, and they just like competed themselves out of business.
Oh man.
And that's where they had all the Dragon Punch energy drinks, all the T-virus antidotes,
that kind of stuff.
The Mega Man stuff.
Yeah.
They would sell very lewd statues of Felicia from Darkstalkers, which I have one. And
just
I saw this
them. Just to support them.
Support your local business. It was either Tekken 4 and 4 and 5, or they threw Soul Calibur 2 or 3 in there. We have to look this up. Maybe Bruce can find a picture of this, but it was a special packaging that said like Namco Fighting, and I think it was a combination of a Soul Calibur and a Tekken or something like that.
Well, if that's a thing, they need to bring that back because that just sounds really awesome.
A Soul Calibur collection still blows my mind. We have 2, but just 2, and that's not even a collection.
And I was really excited for 2 HD Online, even though it's missing, one of the biggest parts of Soul Calibur 2, which is Link. But that game came out, and the netcode is absolutely atrocious. It is like the epitome of Bandai Namco netcode type stuff, where it is just like, dang, dude, I'd prefer to play this like offline and communicate with a friend through like carrier pigeon.
Phone.
Yeah, like it was so bad. So people, if you want to play it online, it's best to do it just through Parsec, dude. But that collection's amazing. Like it has most of the stuff. It looks great. I don't even think you can buy it anymore, unfortunately. I think it was delisted from PS3 360.
Really?
But I think. But yeah, like I was immediately like, what about Soul Calibur 1? Like, what about Soul Edge or 3 or 4? But I started to understand like Bandai Namco backed themselves into a corner when it came with their old games, because 3 has an issue of like some licensing of anime characters or something like that.
Sure.
The same thing that 4 has, where it's got a lot of like manga characters in it that have been made into Soul Calibur characters. And at that point, it's like, well, screw it, and we can't get the licensing rights to Vader and Starkiller and Yoda.
Yeah, they're not going to re-up that. But then they're like, if we're not going to re-up that, then people are like, well, what was the point of releasing Soul Calibur 4?
Yeah, that's the whole
for
reason.
Many people.
Soul Calibur is so deeply tied to what people think of their guest characters that if that's not in there, then who gives a shit? To the point where that was the reason why Soul Calibur 2 HD Online didn't sell well, because it didn't have the thing that everybody remembered from Soul Calibur 2, which was fucking Link. So anyway,
I always want to know what that conversation was as to why, like, that came out when the Wii U was around, right? Soul Calibur 2 HD.
I had a conversation with them. Is there going to be a Wii U version? And they were very coy about it, saying that like, and I was like, oh, you stupid assholes! Come on,
You can't even understand at that point. You're like, oh, what are you speaking? What language are you speaking? Just tell me the answer. Give me something.
No, you don't get an answer. Here's the thing: if that's Nintendo's fault, we don't want to have Link reappear in that. Yeah. Then say that, but they don't want to say that because then that puts heat on Nintendo. Yeah. No one wants to talk. No one wants to get anyone angry at anybody. So instead, don't give anybody.
We'll keep it hush hush. I mean, we eventually they got what they wanted because he was in Smash, right? So ultimately,
it's true.
Both people won.
Yeah, I guess.
But yes, like what you were mentioning before is kind of interesting to me that there's a Tekken 4 and 5 pack like stuck together. And that's the reason that's interesting is because if there's a pack of T4 and T5, then that technically has every Tekken game in it up until that point. Because Tekken 5
on the PS2,
Tekken 5 is actually a collection game. It has the arcade versions of Tekken 1, 2, and 3 on it.
God, I thought I was like, how is that possible at first? Here it is, Namco Classic Fighter Collection. It had 3 games. It had Soul Calibur 2, Tekken 4, and Tekken Tag 2.
Link it. I want to see it. It has to be like a Classics collection or something like that, right?
Yeah. This is what I saw because I always recognized it because it had Tekken 4 Jin Kazama on the cover.
Wow,
and
the cover is actually amazing.
Yeah, I have never seen this. I've never seen this
before. Holy,
that's awesome.
This looks fan made.
It's not. I seen it in real life.
I mean, it's being sold on Amazon. Only one left in stock for $149.99.
Yeah, it must be rare as holy shit. But that's crazy. Tekken Tag, Tekken 4.
Yeah.
So it didn't have Tekken 5 on it. So it technically doesn't have Tekken 1, 2, and 3. Technically, right? But it's still like the best. Like most of. Actually, this is a weird as fuck collection. This came out before. This came out before weird. Tekken 5, and they don't have Tekken 5. They have Tekken 4. What the hell?
It must have.
Yeah.
I guess because Tekken 4 is like their latest Tekken, so I guess it's just their little flagship. Yeah.
That's weird.
But Tekken Tag is good though. That's a great one to add in.
Tekken Tag's amazing. And T5 is genuinely some of the best content you can get for a fighting game out there. It's got so much shit in it.
Any other, because we're talking about this today because Capcom Fighting Collection came out a few days ago.
Yeah.
And I think we've all been playing it and we're all really enjoying it. It's very, very, very good collection with like a lot of love poured into it.
Yeah.
Lots of respect. Especially the museum is also quite good. There's lots of museums and like collections the last couple of years, like the last 5 or so years. This is a really strong one. But are there any other collection? We've talked a little bit about like the Alpha Anthology. Oh God.
We did.
And the 15th anniversary collection, which is funny because when you start up Hyper Street Fighter 2 in the Capcom Fighting Collection, has that big 15th anniversary Ryu picture. And I'm like, oh, this is such a mid 2000s logo to me. Do you want to talk about those collections a little bit specifically, or are there any ones you want to give shout outs to?
I actually wanted to go because this one's directly related to Justin at a time when I don't even think I was really familiar because I wasn't competitive with this game at all. There's a big focus of collections in early FGC as far as ways that you can actually play certain fighting games. And I have to ask Justin, like when Super Turbo was being played competitively and the only way to play Super Turbo was on Super Turbo hardware and you didn't have Super Turbo arcade hardware, wasn't it played on some funky PlayStation 1 Capcom arcade collection sort of thing?
So Evo, every time when Evo transferred to console, I swear to God, they could not like figure out which ST to use, right?
Yes.
Which Street Fighter, they literally every year was a different version of ST. One year was Dreamcast, another one was the PlayStation 2 one, another one was
3DO.
was the PS1 version that you're talking about, where everyone complained, and then eventually they just said, all right, we're not running ST anymore, we're gonna have the Tournament of Legends, and people just brought their own arcade hardware. But yes, it was played on PS1, and literally all the people that probably were like considered going to be top 8, they got smoked because it was a terrible,
because it's like a terrible
port. It was 100% different game. Everything like that was weird. It was bad.
In the same way that like for so many years, a lot of people that are like casual would be like, man, Dreamcast has the best versions of all the fighting games. It's got CVS2, it's got MBC2. I'm like, okay, it's got Third Strike, and I'm like, whoa, no. Hit the brakes, buddy. Like, this Third Strike on Dreamcast is actually a different game. Things do not work, and they work differently in that version. It's just off by a certain amount. So the Dreamcast Third Strike, to anybody that's like relatively normal or casual with the game, would be like, okay, cool, right? But those collection of games, and 3DS especially, is just like, anybody competitive is like, hell no, we don't touch that shit with a 10-foot pole. So I think this is sort of like a similar situation where Evo was like, don't touch this version with a 10-foot pole, but they have to play on console, and that was the only option they had.
It was bad.
I think John Choi has a great quote on that version of ST. He's like, it's a fucking Neo Geo conversion of ST, I think. Speaking of Street Fighter 3, remember Double Impact?
Yes.
The Dreamcast collection. That was where I played the most like Street Fighter 3 in like a single session, because like I lived in the suburbs, so it was hard for me to get the arcades. So I put the most time in there. And that's where my hatred of the Dreamcast controller came from, because I had to learn Street Fighter 3 on its D-pad. Dreamcast controller, I'm honestly fine with it in like 95% of situations, but it comes to 2D fighters.
Yes.
3D fighters, Power Stone, Soul Calibur, it's fine. But with Street Fighter 3, like my thumb would... I have deformed thumbs nowadays, because that one weekend playing on the serrated edges, like the crustio of D-pads.
I would say don't worry, Matthew, because whenever we play that system, that lovely system, locally with friends, and we play any game that requires concentration, whether it's out trigger to NFL Blitz 2000, and you grip the controller in a tight fashion trying to complete a play or do a cool move, we all leave like the end of that Simpsons episode with all the kids on the trampoline. There's just like, ow, our hands are just messed up. It's terrible, man.
It's painful.
I love the system, but that controller fucking hurts, dude.
I think the craziest part is seeing like pad players that don't want to play on stick. They use those controllers in like Marvel's Capcom 2 tournaments.
Yes.
And the way they're holding the controllers, usually you're holding with your thumbs. They have to hold it like this on some like hand is up, right, type of position, and fingers are down like this. This is how they're playing Marvel's Capcom 2.
That's Crab Claw version. Yeah. Play it this way. It's Crab Claw version. That's what they got to do. Yeah.
So Alpha Anthology, I have a lot of good memories for that specifically, maybe even a bit more than 15th anniversary edition.
Sure.
Because I would play it on work breaks, and I was doing QA, and I was playing real shit games on QA where I was working at the time. The place where I was working, it would be like any companies that didn't want to subject their testers to these games. Like this is like my Spanish coach and my Japanese coach, these like language learning games, and like my 3D adventure puppy store, like for games or Ubisoft was like, no, we're not testing this. We're licensing this. We're publishing this. But so I would be playing these games like 8 hours a day.
Oh my God.
And a lunch break, I just brought my PS2 in, and like Alpha Anthology was like fairly new. And I just put that in. I was just like, let me just play like Alpha 3 or Alpha 2. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, did this have a code where you held buttons at the start screen or whatever, and it unlocked Super Gem Fighter?
Yes, that's the game.
Okay.
Yeah, Super
I
Gem
couldn't
Fighter
remember if that was it.
It was like, I think it was on the back of the box, but it was also technically hidden. It was one of the like extra games that was in it where you can play Pocket Fighter. Yeah.
So it sucks because it's like, it doesn't really need to exist right now, Alpha Anthology, to re-release that. Not really. because all the games exist, either in the Street Fighter 30th anniversary collection, or the recent fighting collection. But I still kind of want it.
That technically, no. What do you mean? Is the one version of
Alpha 2 Gold.
Alpha 2 Gold, which is the one that like everyone always mentions. The biggest issue of talking about further collections, Street Fighter 30th anniversary, is that it doesn't have the finality versions of some of the games because they were either limited on arcade hardware or arcade ROMs, or they're on consoles. So Alpha 2 Gold, the one that actually has Cammy, I don't think made it to 30th anniversary?
No, it did not. Alpha 2 on 30th is just from the original arcade.
Yeah.
So everything is all original arcades.
And isn't Alpha 2 also on 30th anniversary arcade vanilla Alpha 2, where Ken's alpha counter does like 25% or something?
It is the jank broken version.
So
version.
That was always a thing that I think the modern collection of Capcom, like fighting collection with Darkstalkers, they'd let you choose like every version of the game that exists. You can choose the Japanese version, the English version, like anything like that. So if you want to play one that had slightly different changes to balance adjustment, this move did this different thing. In this collection, they actually let you do that. You can play all the different versions of the game. In 30th anniversary, beautiful collection, but man, you got one version of those games and that was it. And there might have been 3 revisions to some of the games that came out between, especially like Alpha 2. There was like at least a couple different versions that, people play either competitively or not, or like the original. Like X-Men versus Street Fighter had like a similar thing where it's like, oh yeah, you have the one with like really cool infinites and stuff, and one that just doesn't have it.
Funny story that you mentioned that with Alpha 2 is that like the whole time until probably the last 2 years, everyone's been playing on the Japanese version of Alpha 2 in tournaments. And this one guy made a YouTube video saying, bro, Justin Wong has been winning these Alpha 2 tournaments with this glitch and he didn't tell anybody. And the craziest part was, I was like, what glitch? Right? So I'm watching it and I'm like, oh, I didn't know that's a glitch. I thought that was normal. So then they changed it because now everyone plays on the American version of Alpha 2 where that glitch is actually not in that game, but the Japanese version had it. But another thing with the 30th anniversary is that the one thing that the Capcom Fighting Collection learned was they made every game online, because the 30th anniversary collection only had 4 games online. So you couldn't even play Alpha 2 or Second Impact online and like Street Fighter 1 or like other Street Fighter 2s. And I'm like, bro, that's like the point. I want to play all these different games online, but Capcom Fighting Collection, they did a great job with that one.
And that's the thing about Alpha Anthology is that you get all those versions of Alpha 2 in that anthology.
Yeah. But here's the thing now, like, I want to get your guys' take on this. There's a collection that's not a fighting game collection specifically coming later this year, which is the Ninja Turtles Cowabunga collection. And why this collection is special, why I think it relates to fighting games, is because, well, A, it has TMNT Tournament Fighters. I think all 3 versions. And I think only a couple of games have online. I think the Super Nintendo version of Tournament Fighters has online. But the reason why this collection is amazing is because let's dig out the Game Boy games.
Yeah,
let's put them on there. Let's put the Genesis version of Hyperstone Heist, which is technically just an upgraded, remixed port of. It takes bits and pieces and puts in new stuff. I know I'm not going to go about all day, but Hyperstone Heist on the Genesis uses the sprites and some backgrounds from Turtles in Time. But now I want a Alpha collection. Now that you mention it, I want with an Alpha collection that has Street Fighter Alpha 1 on the Game Boy Color, which is a really neat version because they maintain a smooth frame rate and smooth animation, but the characters are really tiny, but it plays pretty good. And I want GBA Alpha 3.
Yeah.
And I want the PSP Alpha 3 Max. And we never really got that. So if I'm just saying, Capcom, if you're going to add more games, if you're going to add more games into the fighting collection, or just separate Alpha into its own thing, maybe at a cheaper price, I would still pay for you to reach back in. And like, I know probably Capcom Japan is like, no, fuck that version. Who cares? Like, whatever. But like, these are still things that are missing. If you really want to honor the legacy of Street Fighter in every like possible port, I think there's people out there that would buy them, especially like Alpha 3 on GBA and Alpha 3 Max on the PSP specifically.
So here's an interesting take about this, because it does echo back with like Alpha 3 Anthology, right? It does echo all the way to the new Capcom Fighting Collection, that Capcom has always had this mentality and this focus of getting their home ports as close to the arcade versions as possible. So the master version is essentially the arcade version, and that's the one that they're always like striving to achieve, and the one that they put the most focus on, the most competitive one, right? But it sort of left a few games in the dust, like once again Alpha 3 Max, which is available only on some systems, some portable systems, and has the most content by and far of all the versions of Alpha 3. It has an absolute metric shit ton, and it'll never come back because it was just a PSP game, if not like a GBA game, you know? So that's the weird thing about their focus on collections. They're always arcade focused for the most part, and that's the same exact thing with this one too.
Yeah. That's unfortunate. Yeah, it's unfortunate because like SNK does a pretty good job of like re-releasing like kind of like those like, you know, GBA ports or even like the Neo Geo Pocket ports on like on the Switch. So I feel like Capcom could just do that. Just go to the whole Switch route. Just release these games that people played on previous like handhelds and just put it on the Switch.
That's why the Capcom Arcade Stadium and like the other collections, it's like weird because you're setting itself up to be like this museum of all these games, like Stadium Museum, whatever. And like you could just keep adding games to it, even obscure ports. Like I know it says Arcade Stadium, but I mean, who cares? You don't have to like stick really rigidly to that name.
Yeah.
But I'd love it if they just like, here's a bundle that's a bunch of obscure handheld ports. Like the very first handheld port of Street Fighter 2 on the original Game Boy is like this clunky, not very fun game. I mean, it looks interesting. They have like little bits of Super Turbo in that version, but it's just called World Warrior. Like it has certain normals that are from Super Turbo. They have portrait art that's from Super Turbo. And you're like, what? That's so weird. But like, I would love to get Super Turbo Revival. The first GB.
Like, please mention that it's like the best artwork in a Street Fighter game I've ever seen.
So, cool.
So good for GBA is so good.
Yeah.
And they have like these new super screens and new backgrounds. Like Guile and a couple characters get new backgrounds for no reason.
That game's super interesting because it's almost like an alpha game, and Super Turbo like fucked, and they came up with a really weird, unique version of Super 2 Turbo. Like it's actually kind of awesome if anyone can actually play it nowadays.
Like, I don't know if anyone from Capcom USA listens to TripleKO. I hope someone does. But it's like, we're giving you gold here. Just give us Street Fighter 2 Turbo Revival and let us see that great portrait art again. Because it's so weird. Because that was something like the 10th anniversary of Street Fighter 2 when that was released. Because I think that was released in 2001. Which would make it 10 years since Street Fighter 2,
that time frame. Yeah, it was definitely close to that time frame because I distinctly remember around like the 15th anniversary or so, which was I think 2004 is when 15th anniversary collection came out. That was the next big one, right? Where Third Strike is finally being released on something that is not the Dreamcast. Hyper Street Fighter 2, which is like a Celebration arcade port that lets you manually choose the versions of all, you know, the versions of characters on it, which is the one we're actually getting in this collection that's coming out soon, if not is already out right now. So you don't have to pick like, Sagat and do a code for him. No, he's just there. And that's the one that Capcom's first big attempt outside of Japan to like put a big amount of online into their games. And CVS2 got it on Xbox like beforehand. And I think the Xbox version was the only other one of the 15th anniversary that actually had online. I'm pretty sure the PS2 version was not online.
No. Yeah. It was not. It was more of a tournament port. Like so, a lot of people use that version of Third Strike as their main tournament for console tournaments for PS2.
And that's the one where I cut my teeth on Third Strike. That's the one that like a lot of us played the hell out of because it was essentially like the tournament standard. And interestingly enough, it's actually not perfect. Right. Some things it's a very weird difference. It's like a half frame faster. And it's the one that was the closest to arcade that you can possibly get. So some very minor differences. But here's the thing. You're never going to get an arcade perfect version of any game if it's a port or emulation. That's just the nature of the situation. If you want arcade perfect, you have to get arcade hardware. That is just the way it goes.
Yeah. Arcade hardware or play on Fightcade, pretty much.
Exactly. This was their best bet, though, right? And it was, from what I remember, that version of Third Strike, because so many people were disappointed with the Dreamcast version, was practically an in-house port where they had to remake a lot of the game to be as close to the arcade version as possible, and was like made by Capcom internal. Funny enough, would go on to fuel Third Strike Online Edition. They used the PS2 version for Third Strike Online because at that point it was the only like code that they had that actually functioned that wasn't directly arcade, because they didn't want to emulate, you know? They wanted to do original version of the game. So 15th anniversary is like crazy, and I think Matt will remember this, also has the full movie.
Street Fighter animated movie in it. It was in the options screen, I think. You go to options and there's like under that there's like special features. And I think that's where I watched that movie the most. Like I'd rented on video like, you know, at least a dozen times as a kid. But I think it was like the censored version. Oh, yes. So Chun-Li's shower scene gets cut down a little bit.
The Sagat Shore you can see is completely cut out practically.
God.
It zooms in on a random part of it so you can't see the blood bursting out of his chest and stuff.
It's the most G-rated version of Street Fighter 2, the animated movie. And there's an HBO version, there's a G version, and then there's also the actual uncut version, which is where like
only in Australia.
Where Vega calls Chun-Li a bitch and like all this crazy shit, like, and that eventually got released, which is great. It's a crazy version of the movie.
As a kid, I was like, no, she's a witch. Who calls her a witch? Because who can spin around like that? That's got to be witchcraft, right?
Just flying in the air with the kicks in the air. But is the 15th anniversary? Is that the one where it came with that giant joystick?
It had a joystick with it.
It was
it
like
didn't come with it.
Like it was like a huge unplayable.
Oh, here he goes! There he goes!
Get it. It has beautiful artwork. I remember the artwork is so beautiful. Yeah. But bro, it was so hard to play. Oh yeah, that's the one. That was so hard to play on. If you try to mash, your hand's gonna get callous all day. The buttons are so terrible on that one.
It was supposed to be like a giant American bat stick controller, so it was like you had to essentially use 90% your forearm if you wanted to do fireballs and stuff. That's what I learned how to play Third Strike on, man. It was brutal.
Bro, you try to mash? It's just impossible.
Terrible, yeah.
I mean, the bat stick made the most sense at that time in the like, you know, mid to early 2000s, because it's still what most people were the standard. It's only until people could start building arcade sticks or shipping them from Japan where you like that things obviously changed.
I would say, you know, the off topic, but it's just like Tekken 5 release was probably the one that changed everybody to switch over to like a Japanese style, because they
that Hori stick.
The Hori stick.
The Hori one,
because you could buy the collector's edition and you get the Japanese Tekken 5 stick from Hori, and that one is still up there in top 5 sticks I ever used in my life.
Yeah, there was an H-Rap, a gray and red one that was really popular that I imported from, I think it was Licksang, that old Japanese website. And I imported it. It was like $170. I was like, I'm not eating for a few weeks, but it's going to be good, boy.
But like change the date on the calendar. It's been exactly this many days since someone's mentioned Licksang. Damn. It's really funny. They're not doing it perfectly, but they're getting pretty close, where Capcom's making everything, you know, available. But like we're saying, these obscure ports and versions are not quite there, but they're still doing the best out of all the 4 or 5 major game studios, developers, publishers, teams, whatever you want to call them. It's like they're still way ahead of everyone else. Do you think
SNK is winning?
See, they're not re-releasing full collections with online, but they are at least making it all available through the arcade archives.
Yeah.
So you can get almost every fighting game through that. And it's only a couple of older King of Fighters games that have some online thrown in on Steam and whatnot. You know, 98 Ultimate Edition, Final Edition,
2002
yeah, stuff like that. But it's like, there's still no Virtua Fighter collection. There's no PS2 Mortal Kombat collection. There's not even like, you know, a collection that puts in. There's not even
except an MK collection anymore. Like the MK trilogy, I think
you can't buy one.
A lot of it's delisted on most platforms. Yeah.
There's no Tekken thing, and when you said about Soul Calibur, like all these characters, that's a legit concern. Like, I mean, I guess you have to take them out, but they're always going to have to assume, is this worth it? But everyone just doesn't really do this. And I don't know if they do a cost analysis and say, no one's going to buy this. Like Soul Calibur 2 did really poorly.
I don't think it's that. And here's the thing. I think it's like the fact that they might be popular, like they could be, but they only could eventually release like one version of some games every once in a while, which is why you see Soul Calibur 2 HD. And that's it. There was also a Soul Calibur 1 port that did get released and eventually delisted, which is actually a great version of Soul Calibur 1. It's like
it is. I played it not too long ago.
You can't buy it anymore. Like it also got delisted.
Was that the arcade version or was that a port of the Dreamcast version?
I think it was the Dreamcast version.
Oh, it was.
It had a bunch of modes and stuff in it. It wasn't like, and granted, the arcade version of Soul Calibur 2, if you got a port of that, I don't think is the game that you might remember Soul Calibur being, because it's janky as fuck. It's like the original PS1 port of Soul Calibur is practically what it is. But even that getting delisted is weird, where it's like, why is this stuff not available? Why? Like, what is going on? And I did some investigating many years ago at an E3, and I asked some very specific individuals like about older ports of like Tekken, older ports of Soul Calibur, like why don't these eventually get re-released? And the offhand answer, without including names, was licensing and rights, where I think it really comes down to things like music. So it isn't like Gone, and you don't have the rights to Gone, and that is a part of it, right? Or we don't have the rights to some of those like guest characters like Soul Calibur. I think the way that the 90s era, if not early 2000s era of especially Bandai Namco worked was that there's a lot of music tracks in those games that are like tied to the game. And if they are not consulted with like the original creators or something, they just can't re-release it.
So even you don't think they could probably like scrub it out, like in terms of like replace the music or take out the character?
There might be a weird clause stopping that from happening, where it's like if it's not included, you can't re-release it or something like that. Because there's a funny amount of like old school Bandai Namco games that had a very similar sound team that, I don't know, that might be the reason why you usually do not see old school collections of any kind for those games. And I wouldn't even be surprised if it's kind of similar to like even Mortal Kombat, where it's some weird clause of some small thing that they just won't put it out because of that. Because there's a huge collection of MK games that are just, even the original friggin' trilogy just barely exists nowadays, which is insane to me.
I know.
It also is kind of the circumstances of the company, I find. So case in point, when SNK was like barely alive during like the early to mid 2000s, I honestly lose track of how wasn't there an Orochi Saga collection and like an Orochi Saga collection volume 2?
Wait, what?
Where they could, I remember, maybe it's because it's the Wii or something, but like I remember there being multiple collections of King of Fighters games only on the Wii. Like then there was the Samurai Showdown anthology.
Yes.
Yep.
The Fatal Fury Battle Archives Part 1. Maybe this is what I'm thinking of. And then Fatal Fury Battle Archives Part 2. It's like you couldn't fit just a few more onto the first collection.
They were copying that Capcom Street Fighter collection shit, where they would split a whole bunch of Street Fighter games in between Street Fighter Collection 1 and Street Fighter Collection 2.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
And later, the Mega Man collections, like Part 1 and Part 2, I'm like...
Capcom's been doing this since the 90s.
They have. All the SNK collections, we've made jokes about them before, but it's like, if you want to experience these games, like, do not experience them in this way, because I think you can get a lot of these on the PS4 digital store, at least the Battle Archives, because I've done such, and some of the King of Fighters collections. But it's like they just have the most god-awful front ends, the most basic bitch-looking menus, terrible music, and some of the greatest filters you'll ever see ruining your pixel art. And I think you can always turn them off, but I want to say there's one or two where you like couldn't turn off, or some of them came stretched as the standard. All these collections, but they didn't care because they were like, we're barely making money. Just throw these out. Like maybe someone will buy them, maybe they won't. And there was just so many of them. Like the Art of Fighting anthology. Yes, for everyone that's hankering to play Art of Fighting, here's that collection for you.
Unfortunately, I did buy that as a kid. So
of course you did. And the World Heroes. There was a World Heroes when they put everything into a collection. in like 2004, 2005 in my head. And then when the Wii came out, they re-released them again. And then there's weird stuff like Fuan Super Combo Collection. Do you know this?
Wait. Which one? Say that again. I didn't even hear what you said.
Like Fuan. Like
Fuan?
It's like FU-UN.
Hey, what games
combo
are on there?
Collection. Like Savage Rain and Kazuna Encounter.
I'll be down for that.
They're good games.
I would be down for that.
It has such a weird name, and I think it's also on the PlayStation 4 store. Oh, what is it? It's such a weird name. I'm sorry, it's so weird. FUN Combo Collection.
They should just call it the Neo Geo fighting game collection at that point.
No, it's FUN FU FU''UN Super Combo.
Wow.
That's a great name. It's like when the Hobbs and Shaw movie was called Fast and Furious. It was called Wild Speed Super Combo in Japan. So yeah, it just has Savage Rain and Kazuna Encounter because they didn't know what to call it. What do you call this collection? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They have two games. They have two different names. It's not like it's Savage Rain 1 and Savage Rain 2. They just called the second game a different name.
Just call it Wild Speed Super Combo.
They should have.
That's what it just sounds better. It's easier to pronounce than Fu-Un.
Yeah.
I think, man, I'm trying to think in my head like of collections, like which ones hit for me the most. Obviously, I think the one I played the most was 15th Anniversary because I definitely played arguably the most online matches of any game I've ever played on that version of Third Strike because it was actually online on the original Xbox. I played a shit ton of that game.
Me too.
So, but going beyond that, I think in terms of like port houses that eventually released a bunch of collections that did like the highest quality job, the one that immediately comes to mind because they're technically still a port house, but they don't make these kinds of collections of games anymore. Is Iron Galaxy. Yeah.
I knew it.
And what they eventually did with Third Strike Online Edition, which was not a collection, it was a re-release port, which is essentially the best version of Third Strike. It has the most feature-rich, extra colors, extra music, like all this stuff, all this wonderful flash, new artwork, new UI, new theme song. It's also pretty good and a pretty good traditional like honor to the original. MVC Origins was great, and Darkstalkers Resurrection was also fantastic. All with great netcode.
I can't remember if it was Origins or Darkstalkers, where in the move lists they would have like little bits of commentary telling you this move has no applications.
Yeah,
like this move, like there's little developer notes like never use this, completely useless in most situations. I'm like, that's amazing.
Yeah, like old school fighting games are.
Yeah, I remember I played a crap ton of MVC Origins online. The online was just so good. Great. I think I was playing with Arturo from like New York, and this is when I was living in California at the time, and it was working great. It was fantastic. I know a lot of people were playing on there as well too, so it was definitely a very successful collections, I would say. And
yeah, like Darkstalkers Resurrection was the final one to be released, and they made a lot of crazy improvements to the netcode. In that version, which was using the same foundation that was in Third Strike Online as well as MVC Origins, and they went back to Third Strike Online and MVC Origins and essentially like reverse added the netcode improvements that they put in the previous games. It would take like a year for that to show up in some way, which was crazy, like after the game was clearly long gone, but they eventually did that. So now there's like significantly better netcode for all of those games. Unfortunately, you can't play any of them unless you have an Xbox 360 or a PlayStation 3.
Sorry, you go ahead, Justin.
No, you go for it.
Okay, because what I have to say is dumb. Is this viable in 2022? A Street Fighter 4 collection. Is this a good idea? Would people buy this? Would you want it? A super vanilla arcade version, the console version. Sorry, not super, but Street Fighter 4 vanilla, the arcade version, Street Fighter 4 the arcade, the console version, then Super, then Ultra, then Arcade Edition, then 3DS,
I think
Gotta
it's
put-
technically
You forgot the iOS and Android
yes. Volts, the phone versions. Technically, it's unnecessary because they practically did that in Ultra.
Yes.
In Ultra, they gave you all versions that you could play, like a Hyper Street Fighter 2 Turbo, like sort of situation where you can just select vanilla to Omega versions of characters. But yeah, like in terms of should that be available on more things? Should that be available on Nintendo Switch? Yes. I don't know
just Ultra. Yeah.
I don't know how that hasn't happened, which is insane to me. But yeah, like that's like an insanely featured version of Street Fighter 4 that I think everyone should have access to.
Because you can get it on Steam Ultra, right?
Yes.
And it's still like it still boots up and
Steam
it's fine.
And PS4 and Xbox 360.
60?
Yeah. It wasn't on Xbox One at all.
Yeah.
I not too long ago I did get a Steam Deck, and while Ultra plays fine on my desktop, it just is broken as soon as you boot it up in Steam Deck. It's one of those games that no one would prioritize. Why would Capcom go back and make sure that plays on Steam Deck? But it just doesn't even. Oh, here's what it does. You get to the front end, you select your fighters, and as soon as gameplay starts, it just black screen and it just booted me out. So it fooled me for a little while. Do you think there's any other sort of franchises or series where it's like we could really use a collection, but you just don't think it's going to happen?
Series collection, please.
Yeah,
because it's Marvel Origins literally the only official. Damn,
the answer is yes.
Unfortunate.
That's the only one. And here's so I know personally, I got to work very closely with the devs on Marvel Origins and Marvel and Capcom. So because we made promotional videos. And yeah, it tanked fucking hard, man. Like nobody bought it. So here's the reason. There's a great reason why. There's a great reason why nobody bought Darkstalkers Resurrection either. Not even that fact. Like it had Marvel 1 and Marvel Origins on it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Marvel 1 and Marvel Superheroes, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Games that had already been out on previous things and had been technically accessible, if not on Fightcade and whatnot, right? It did not have the two games that you would expect, which is Marvel 2 and X-Men vs. Street Fighter. Because X-Men vs. Street Fighter has never had an actual arcade version of it released in some way, at that point at least. It was always the bunk-ass PS1 version where it was 1v1 fighting game practically, or the Saturn version that was super specific to Japanese only, needed a RAM cart to play the goddamn thing. So X-Men vs. Street Fighter never had a port, like a decent arcade port. Marvel Superheroes have been out on a lot of stuff. Marvel versus Capcom had been on technically a lot of stuff. It was the versions that people didn't want, and Marvel 2 at that point was technically still the old version, right? Was technically still like the PlayStation 3 online version, so that wasn't included either. It was like, dude, this is not what people wanted. Like it's the wrong games.
How much was Origins? Do you remember?
I think it was only like 25 bucks.
I think it was like around
that's a lot for two games actually.
Yeah, so
just two, like,
but you get achievements.
And online, they're great. Like they're great, but I didn't know many people that were like super down to play Marvel Superheroes. If you also had Marvel versus Capcom 1 on there, because MVC 1 is just like several games later, you know?
Yeah. I only played Marvel vs. Capcom 1 because like nobody was on Marvel Superheroes.
Nobody played it.
Well, I mean, we've talked about Capcom versus SNK collection, but I'm not sure how deep we went into it. When I was thinking back, I'm like, put them all there. Put every collaborative game, like just repackage the Neo Geo Pocket things, put everything in there. All those obviously don't maybe need online, let's say, maybe they could, but everything, SVC Chaos, the SVC Chaos Plus or whatever with the added characters in there, just everything. Because immediately you almost go, oh, just Capcom vs. SNK 1 and 2. Yeah, no, that'll do. But
if we want to talk about hopes for the future type stuff, like Capcom is the huge, outside of like Bandai Namco and NRS, who just have like a huge library of games that they just seemingly won't release on anything ever. Capcom's now getting into the point where it's like, oh, there's some hope,
Yes,
maybe
they are.
Maybe there's a Versus collection out there somewhere. Maybe there's a CVS2 collection. Maybe they'll bring Power Stone collection back, which was on PSP. Maybe there'll be a Rival Schools collection. Maybe Star Gladiator or some weird shit'll show up. Like, there's so many hopefuls there.
They have been spamming collections because they even did the whole like Disney collection that they did too, right?
Yep.
So they might as well. I mean, nostalgia is in right now. We are in 2022, but everybody loves these collections now. I think it just does a lot better, especially if you added like if you treat the same love with Capcom Fight Collection with the good online and just kind of all these like artwork and museum and stuff like that. I think it would just definitely do well in this season.
I think remasters are kind of like, I see some blowback on some remasters. Not all of them, but some of them like, really, that's getting remastered. Okay, sure. But collections like the ones I mentioned, SNK and stuff, were like, a little rough around the edges. But yeah, if they do it like the Capcom Fighting Collection or the Beat 'em Up bundle and everything, if they do it that level but if they put even more games, that's why I'm really excited to check out the TMNT Cowabunga collection, because that's like 14 games, right? Yeah. And games where it's like, who would really want that? They're like, not a lot of Game Boy games age very well, but they're doing it because there must be at least, a good percentage of people like, well, I had good memories playing those games at least. Yeah. And it's very rare you see Game Boy games thrown into any collections nowadays at all. So I'm still amazed they do it. It's like the one video game thing Konami has done in the last couple of like decades. Here you go. So I'm looking forward to that.
Isn't Tournament Fighters in that collection also like online? Isn't the SNES version of Tournament Fighters have online capability?
I did mention that earlier. I think it's just the SNES version, SNES version.
Yeah.
And I think they did confirm it's like, this is being made by not Backbone, Digital Eclipse. And I think they did confirm it's like, yes, these are going to have rollback, I think.
It's made by the same dudes who did Street Fighter 30th Anniversary Collection.
So yeah, it should. But I mean, 30th Anniversary doesn't work super well online anymore, so I don't think it ever did.
30th Anniversary online is not the best. It's not the best.
I have a crazy tidbit about how you fix 30th Anniversary Collection. You guys can actually play that game with good online. It does exist. The problem is the console versions of it. The VSync adds such an insane amount of input delay, and that you go online and you add more input delay, it feels like you're playing in delay-based netcode, even if it does have rollback. Here's the crazy part. I went back and I fired up 30th Anniversary on PC, disabled VSync, screen tearing out the ass, right? It's a huge problem in the game, but it was snappy, it was super responsive, and the online was great. Once I eliminated how much input delay was caked into the game because of VSync and all these other like extraneous issues, which happens in the console versions, I think the console version, no kidding, of 30th Anniversary Collection has like 6 or 7 frames of caked in delay, and then you add the input delay of online, which is like 3 to 4 frames, and it's like, holy shit, this is a different game, buddy. The PC version is actually not bad, but it's got technical problems because you're disabling VSync.
I couldn't like VSync, like screen tearing, like it didn't used to bother me until I really, really saw it happen in a game. When I saw it was when the very first Darksiders came out on the 360 that had like huge screen tearing problems. And I would see in reviews and people complain online, screen tearing. I don't know what it is. I didn't know what it was. And then I look at it, I'm like, oh, the screen is being sliced in half a million times. Yeah. Someone's doing like a million stab to it. I'm like, what the hell is
on the screen?
And then they had to release like a patch like a month later. I'm like, oh, okay, finally. And ever since then, when I see it like why would a 2D fighting game even need it on modern systems? How is that even an issue that it would have screen tearing? Well said, Max.
Decisions were made.
I think it's just their emulation, their wrapper, like their whole like system. Like the same exact thing happened, unfortunately, with there was a Mega Man collection where it was like Mega Man collection part 1 and 2. And yes, like I remember playing that on PlayStation 4. And I was making jumps in Flashman stage and Mega Man 2, and I was like, holy fuck. Like, I played this odd line. Like, it was nuts, dude. You could not accurately jump from platform to platform because of how much input delay there was. And that is actually, there's several YouTube videos on it that go over, like, the collections that were made by Digital Eclipse on which versions have the least amount of input delay. Shockingly, like, the Xbox versions are the most responsive of all of them. And then the PC version is ultimately the best, but the PlayStation PlayStation versions, insane. Like like 5 to 8 frames of input delay type shit. Like so much that it changes the fundamentals of the whole game. And that also applied to 30th Anniversary Collection.
Yeah, like when you're going back to these old games and stuff, there's like two things that like kind of are unique for them being released nowadays. It's like, you want people to be nostalgic and like, oh, I remember this game. You want it to be up to what their memories are. So that's like when the PlayStation Classic came out and they're using like the European versions of the games and they're running at
Tekken
50.
3, bro.
Yeah.
And they're I like still to this day, I don't even understand how that happened because technically that's a collection. Had like a fighting game. Was it just Tekken 3? Had Toshinden 1 as well.
Toshinden as well. It didn't really matter because Toshinden runs at approximately 13 frames per second. So
it's because it was so advanced, Max.
So advanced. The craziest part about the PS1 Mini, yeah, Tekken 3, all the games were essentially bunked at a fundamental level. They're using the wrong versions of the games, but it wasn't the hardware's fault. In fact, the hardware in a PlayStation 1 Mini is crazy good. Like the components in it like allow you to run like Dreamcast games and stuff like that. You could run the entire PlayStation library if you want. You just have to like get into it and change some stuff, but it was whoever designed it at a fundamental level and chose to put stuff in it just did it incorrectly through and through. It was ridiculously cheap.
I want to talk to this person. I should make a what happened on the PlayStation Mini Classic. Yeah,
bro, you get him to interview, and then he has to wear a mask so he doesn't reveal himself.
Yeah,
where's change his voice.
Yeah, it's like wrestling secrets exposed. It's like that type of thing.
But yeah, in terms of like wishing which games would eventually get a collection in some way, like big wishes.
Okay. Aside from, let's just take the Versus series out because we've mentioned it several times.
Everyone wants it.
Like I want to. You want to. Like my mom wants it. Like
what would be successful? Like if they were to release some of these old Capcom games, what would actually work?
So we've mentioned it before. I think like a Capcom Fighting Collection 2 because they couldn't put it in the wrapper they currently have for Fighting Collection 1. You just have to have a 3D collection of the fighting games because. While I would love just, rival schools, I don't think I'm worried. I'm worried that won't sell.
Not enough power.
You throw in Power Stone.
Okay, yes. That's a good one.
Power Stone and rival schools, that might be good enough. But then there's the weird one-offs. Like no one's ever going to buy Star Gladiator, the collection. You have to throw that. No one's going to buy Techromancer. Just Techromancer. So if you put them all in the Capcom 3D Fighting Collection,
that's
a lot of those games,
great package.
You forgot the most important game, your favorite game, Final Fight Revenge. We always gotta talk about it, man.
Shit.
That's the one. You forgot to put that in.
That would be the one where you got to enter a code and it unlocks.
It says the dank unlocked. But I think in terms of Capcom doing something else currently now that makes the most sense and like people want, that makes the most sense to me. Like, there's some fringe beat 'em ups and some other fringe fighters. I'm like, I don't know where they would fit, but that's what I'd like to see personally.
Like a future where Power Stone 1 and 2, Rival Schools 1 and 2 include the crazy Japanese version that has all the what's it called? All the ridiculous like love triangle stuff. There's like a Japanese version that actually has like dating sim stuff in it. Throw that in there, whatever the hell. Tech Romancer, you also get like all of these wonderful 3D games. They all have online in the same way that every game has online in the current Capcom Fighting Collection. That shit would sell. Like on
I think so.
On
Power Stone Online, it's done. It's
Power
a wrap.
Stone 2 alone, 4-player game online would be just fine,
Kenny himself would buy 50,000 copies just by him. So like it would sell enough to make back its cost. Aside from that, I think considering how popular it is, the fact that there's no Mortal Kombat anything, at least currently happening, like it's the 30th anniversary of Mortal Kombat in general, I believe this year. And like Ed teased a couple of like little videos. I was like, it's a making of. If they actually go by this 30th anniversary of Mortal Kombat with 0, that's someone at Warner Brothers doesn't understand Mortal Kombat's appeal. When Mortal Kombat 11 is like the most successful major fighting game and like traditional, like maybe aside from Smash, like this collection will sell. I don't think you could do something that has the 3D games and the 2D games. That's the engine incompatibility. I don't know.
I think
the fact that there's nothing is weird.
I think we also, me and you, Matt, know a bit more about the potential history of especially the original MK trilogy. Not MK trilogy, the game, but MK 1, 2, and 3/UMK3. There have been over the years several different attempts from I think multiple companies to technically HD remaster those games, if not add new models. And there's big efforts from even independent studios that are just let us do it, man, that look really good. And for some reason, they never get past WB, right? It's either not good enough, or it doesn't go through, or it just doesn't happen, to the point where that feels like they've tried to do this at several points, and it never got to the point of announcement where the game actually became a full game. And now we just are left with nothing. You can't play UMK3. There's no rollback netcode for classic MK games. You can't play any of the PlayStation games. Granted, MK9 and MKX, I understand, right? The characters and licensing, but the old ones, there is zero reason why we can't play MK1 all the way up into Armageddon. There's almost no reason.
So the closest thing you guys can get for a collection is
I know what you're gonna say.
Is actually the Midway Legacy Arcade Machine Mortal Kombat 30th Anniversary Edition from Arcade 1UP.
Yep.
Oh.
They have MK 1, 2, 3, and Ultimate with online.
In the same way that the best way you can get the Versus series in a collection is also the Arcade 1UP cabinet that has every single game online, all with leaderboards and shit like that and lobbies. It's just put it on consoles as well.
Yeah, I would love. Just get it on Steam, PS4. I doubt Mortal Kombat will be on the Switch.
This reason that Justin is saying is the exact reason that I want Arcade 1UP to become a publisher. Right? There should be Arcade 1UP cabinets, and they should also after the cabinet's been out for a year or two, I don't know, also stick versions of those games on consoles. Just get the same licensing.
I mean, how else are you going to get games like Avengers and Galactic Storm back in the market?
Dude, that should be on the Marvel Origins re-release. It all started with Galactic Storm.
You got War of the Gems instead.
Yeah, Justin, so you are right. For classic Mortal Kombat, that's as close as you can get. But do any of you know this link that I just posted to you?
Yeah, I've seen this PS2 game where it's I remember seeing this in a store. All the dank 3D era Deception, Armageddon and Deadly Alliance all in one package. Yep.
It actually, you're almost right. It's Deadly Alliance. It's Armageddon. No, it's Deception, Armageddon, and Shaolin Monks in the middle.
So
isn't that weird?
You know what? There's a huge sacrilege to fighting games is the fact that that Shaolin Monks has never been released on anything outside of the original hardware.
So we'll talk about this in the future, but I'll talk about it a little bit right now. Accidental surprise fighting games embedded in other games. And I'm not sure if you guys have ever, I'm sure you must have at least once with Video Games Max, play the Versus mode in Shaolin Monks because it's a Power Stone Mortal Kombat and it's great.
Yes. I thought you
it's
were
shockingly
about to ask me if I've ever played Sub-Zero MK Mythologies, and I'm like, no, I know that. I've never played that.
Every day I feel depressed about my life. I just watch you playing that.
I've never played that.
It's not that bad. My life isn't bad at all now that I
don't know what you're talking about, actually. That's weird. But yes, the having a versus mode in not fighting games is actually kind of interesting.
Because there's a couple of really, really good ones out there, but that's a subject for another day. But that's as close as you can get for a 3D Mortal Kombat thing, because in the subsequent years, people will be like, okay, well, maybe these games don't play the best. They're a little clunky, but whatever. But everyone remembers all the single player content. Everyone remembers these characters that that haven't been in a Mortal Kombat game in a decade or even more. Yep. And again, WB, I don't know what the deal is. Maybe these games are hard to... I think they used Renderware as their engine. I can't remember now the 3D Mortal Kombat games. But if you just did a collection that was these three and made a 2D collection as well, and a double pack where you get a certain percentage off if you buy one, and then you get a certain percentage off the other. Yeah. To make that more bite size, it's just so straight. If Mortal Kombat was in the dregs, no one was buying it. The last game was a massive financial flop. I understand there's no brand confidence.
Yes. Yeah.
But it's not the case.
It's not the case. No, people would buy the shit out of these old games. That would just happen, and especially if it included the technically the Marvel versus Capcom 2 of the Mortal Kombat series is not MK Armageddon. That's immediately where my brain would go. But if you think about it more and like how much people love this game, how much people consider this version to be the greatest version of like classic MK, that's actually MK Trilogy.
Yeah. I know there's some weird things about it that like
it's
when
super weird.
Yeah, when I watch some catch-up videos on it, he's like, yeah, there's some weird shit in this game, but it's still really cool that you can take like MK1 Kano because there was no MK2 Kano.
Yes.
So got to get him in there and all these
biggest
different
roster
versions
of characters, like in terms of like casual appeal and I'm not talking about competitive because it's like, I think the N64 version is the one that's technically the most competitive of all of them.
I think so. Yeah, it's considered.
In terms of like just reverence of what people remember about classic MKs, it's usually not UMK3. A lot of people go to MK Trilogy as being the greatest version just because it had the most characters, the most shit you could do, the most stages, like the most brutalities and all this like nutty shit that you could do. Like that was the best version of MK to a lot of people. And it's essentially stuck on PS1, Saturn, and maybe PC. I think there was a PC version. An N64.
I think there might have been. I remember being really hyped when I first heard about it. And this is still when, well, I still mispronounce words all the time. But back in the day as a kid, I was like, oh, Mortal Kombat Triology. That looks awesome. I'd never seen the word before. I didn't know what it meant or whatever. But I was like, oh, try, like, oh, okay, like 3. Okay. But I was just like, Triology. And then someone out on the playground said Trilogy. I was like, oh, right. Yeah, Trilogy. Yeah. So,
not Thrilogy.
Yeah, that would be a great, like, throw that in there. The arcade one-up does not have Mortal Kombat Trilogy, unfortunately.
Definitely.
Right?
No.
It's because it was a console exclusive. It would be cool if there had been an arcade version. I'm surprised that they never did that.
There's
actually
only a weird console version, and every single version between the 3 systems was actually different. I think Sub-Zero plays differently in like all of them.
I think so.
That's always the funniest part with like the different ports where it's just like, yeah, this character is completely different from the other version. And I'm like, why?
No
why?
communication. That's why. Different devs, no communication.
Justin mentioned it earlier, and I was just we kind of didn't really like stay on that subject. But Guilty Gear Collection also seems like a no-brainer.
Yeah, no
because
shit.
they re-released several standalone Guilty Gears here and there on Steam, but like. There's so many weird Guilty Gear games.
Even Guilty Gear 1 has been re-released. It's on Switch and stuff like that.
Oh, it's true. Got that weird ass port.
Yeah, I didn't even know that was on the Switch. That's actually kind of cool.
It might also be on Steam. Don't quote me on that. But yes, I've played the port of Guilty Gear 1 in the last couple years. And yeah, it does exist. But I don't... Are we going to be seeing Guilty Gear Overture? All the different versions of Guilty Gear XX, including maybe Guilty Gear X? Like that. Those are kind of lost to their original hardware.
That's a really dumb sentence.
True. But look, I just want if you just bring back Guilty Gear, the original Guilty Gear 1, on
Dust Strikers,
right, on Steam, and then give it rollback netcode and let people just go ham on it, that would be a dream come true.
That's a fucked up game. that is some Guilty Gear 1 is some crazy shit.
Yeah, I would just love to see some like matches and people just go at it because I have never seen anybody play that in a tournament setting whatsoever. But
wouldn't? No, the Sega doesn't have any like rights to it anymore because therefore that should alleviate the issue because when these games were originally being put out, Sega and Sammy hadn't merged yet.
Not yet. Yeah, I don't think so.
So now it's fine. So I wonder like why no Guilty Gear Collection? At least like a couple. I understand that there's some like Asuka. You couldn't really do that or whatever.
I think it's because like even Arc System Works might see because they did recently Accent Core Plus R got a bunch of support and online and it works great and stuff. I think they might see those versions of the games as being like, why would anybody play the older versions? Because there's like so many different versions of XX leading up to that. They're like, why would anybody play these older versions when we have like the premium version? Even though Reload has a lot of people that love that version before it gets to Accent Core like Plus R type stuff. Like there's one version right before it that's really good that people love. Yes, that exactly. So
yeah. But I totally forgot. You just reminded me of the Accent Core Plus R version. Technically, the Accent Core Plus R version on Steam is a collection because you can play the Accent Core on that Plus R version. You could switch the modes.
Yeah. That's true.
Yeah, so it's I guess it's a pseudo collection where there is 2 games in one.
That's fine.
Yeah, it is, but I think it will be just great where, like, I mean, I feel like the Plus R, it did so good. The re-release with the rollback netcode, like I remember seeing like a tweet about the numbers were just like skyrocketed. They couldn't believe it. Yeah, and everything, like it was a huge amount of like player fan base playing Plus R before Strive coming out. So it was just kind of like, I mean, that's just good enough data for you that these games would work in a collection.
Yeah, I think at some point there was like a few thousand people actually playing like a really old fighting game like Plus R online.
Yeah,
it was cool. It was essentially a lot of people being hyped for the next game because it was before Guilty Gear Strive was actually out, from what I remember. But still, you know, I hope data like that eventually goes and helps out. Yeah, it would be great if, you know, Revelator 2 got rollback netcode. You know, that'd be great.
Or throw a Revelator collection. You know what I mean?
Guilty Gear XR collection. Shit.
So you can't tell me, Arxis, you can't just put another subtitle on those and just re-release them. Yeah. There's no reason just to call it like plus X.
Revelationator.
Revelationator. The other thing that kind of like sort of struck me is on the older like collections by SNK and stuff, like there's 0 online, of course. Just wasn't a thing on the PS2. And well, I mean, it was technically, but like they didn't use it. And like, would I pay for just a Real Bout collection, all the Real Bouts with rollback? Yes, I would. Do I necessarily want Fatal Fury 1 or Fatal Fury 2? No, I don't need those. So it always makes me think about the 30th anniversary of Street Fighter Collection, where it's like, do I really want to play Street Fighter 2 online when Super Turbo is online? Like, so that was a weird thing that they did, but I kind of understood it versus almost all of the games. Well, maybe some of the Darkstalker ones are a little okay. They're very, very similar. All of those on the Capcom Fighting Collection are online.
Yeah,
but they're all unique.
They are unique, and what you're saying is something that is actually giving the game technically some negative press, is the fact that the majority of the collection is Darkstalkers games. Yeah. And for a lot of people that aren't super hyper aware the insane differences between each version of the game, for a lot of people, there is very little reason why so much effort was put into all these previous versions of Darkstalkers when like the latest, newest version of Vampire Savior is the one that is just better. Right? So why are we going to go play Darkstalkers 2? Why would we even want to play Darkstalkers 1 online?
For the intros.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
And the characters, Donovan.
For stuff like, for people like us, that's awesome. Like, it's actually great that every single version's included and they have online. That is crazy cool. But to a lot of folks that just casually know Darkstalkers as a franchise and maybe not the games they came from specifically, to them, the latest version, maybe not even Vampire Savior, like Vampire Savior 2 is a much better game that is just has more stuff in it. Why the heck is there? Exactly. So it's like,
I think we need to have Esteban on the show to explain all the differences between all the Darkstalkers games, because I still don't to this day. I'm like, what is the difference between Vampire Savior 2 versus Night Warriors?
Vampire Savior,
out of every fighting game franchise, I still to this day don't understand the naming conventions and why they were named thus. I didn't know this, but it harkens back to like Capcom USA had a lot of say about Darkstalkers, which to me, in my head, as a kid, or even as the man kid that I am now, I just thought, oh, that's just a cooler name. That's all they thought. Darkstalkers is a cool name, or it was just Capcom Japan just being weird and crazy. Let's just do whatever. Yeah. Capcom USA had a lot to say, like, no, that's not what a vampire looks like. Move it in this direction. And it was a whole process to make Darkstalkers. Yeah. And to me, as back in the 90s, I was like, oh, this is just a monster mashup. And that's it. But it's actually a pretty nuanced development.
Well, when Darkstalkers 3, when Vampire Savior eventually got released in the US, I fucking pre-ordered the game. I pre-ordered Darkstalkers 3, and that is what is on the cover of like the PlayStation game when it eventually made it over here. So to us, like, yeah, when Capcom USA got a hold of things and re-releasing it outside of Japan, outside of weird naming conventions, it was just called Darkstalkers 3. But to anybody else that is a part of like the community that has been continually playing Darkstalkers, they play Vampire Savior. Same thing, right? It is the same thing. But the craziest part is that, and we learned this from this collection, there's a Darkstalkers 3/Vampire Savior 1, there's Darkstalkers 3/2, and there's also Darkstalkers 3/3. And the difference between Darkstalkers 3/2 and Darkstalkers 3/3 is very minor. Like, there's some very small differences between those versions.
Yeah, I think the craziest part is that the latest version of just the Darkstalkers game on the Capcom Fighting Collection is not what people the community play. They play Darkstalkers 3, aka Vampire Saviors
Vanilla.
1. Yeah. Right. So that's the one that you're gonna see a lot of people probably play, at least from the competitive community, gonna be on the Capcom Fighting Collection. And when I was just going through the other games, I just noticed, all right, there's just missing characters. Like one of the games, no Donovan. One of the games didn't have the character I play, Tao Bane, like Wolf. Yeah, he wasn't there. And then even on the character select screen, I want to say on Darkstalkers 3/3, there was like this like black circle area. I'm like, bro, they just like scrubbed out the character. He's just missing a character at that
He's
point.
canceled.
I was like, that's where Jeddah was, and I'm like, yo, he's not even there anymore. Like, where is he? So it seems like they just removed characters, and the roster got slightly smaller on the later versions.
So this actually reminded me, because I it's insanely rare and super expensive. There is like a PlayStation 2 Darkstalkers collection as well. That does exist. It
was only in Japan.
It was only in Japan. And then what eventually I think might have been a very similar port got released here of a Darkstalkers collection on PSP that also had a bunch of stuff on it.
Yeah, the PSP version had like some RPG mechanics where you're like leveling up your characters. Like they added some stuff like that was brand new assets and stuff. But the PS2 collection was like more basic, where it was just like the arcade ROMs kind of thrown in, I believe, because I did a bit of research about this like a year or two ago, when I was looking this stuff up for Darkstalkers.
So, the PSP version was
the Chaos Tower.
Yeah, Darkstalkers Chronicle: The Chaos Tower, which has,
I think the Chaos Tower was like a thing you did in the game.
Yeah, it has Vampire Chronicle for matching service, which was essentially, I think, Vampire Savior, technically online on the Dreamcast, weirdly enough. It has it has Vampire the Night Warriors, Vampire Hunter, Darkstalkers Revenge, and Lord of Vampires. So a weird ass collection.
These tapes are great. It's these PSP collections, right? We talked about the Power Stone one.
Yeah.
And when I was doing some research on this during Capcom USA around like 2005, 2006, there was like this big push. Like, think about it. There was Darkstalkers. Then there was Ultimate Ghosts and Goblins, which was that 3D remake. And they were going to make one more. It was a remake of Bionic Commando, just for the PSP. Then that morphed into Bionic Commando Rearmed.
Oh.
They also had Maverick Hunter, Mega Man X.
Maverick Hunter too, yes. And Powered Up.
Yeah.
That was good. I love Maverick Hunter, by the way. That was cool.
Like, so Capcom did really good on the PSP. Yeah. Like, Alpha 3 as well, like already mentioned.
And Alpha 3 Max is only on PSP, that the most feature-rich version. Yeah,
like, Bruce, please put up the screen of the Alpha 3 Max main mode screen.
And the roster to see how many insane characters are in it. Yeah, if there was one thing that'd be great is seeing like the PSP releases of Capcom games eventually come out on something else
in a collection.
Bro, just put it on the Switch. That's all they have to do. It's so easy.
That would be pretty easy, considering like those games don't like take a lot to run and stuff. But like when I'm concerned in 2022 that Square Enix is just going to make the cloud version of Crisis Core HD on the Switch, because they're like, we did that for Kingdom Hearts. Let's just do it here. Like, we'll have to work on it and like put effort. No. So I'm worried that like Capcom would do cloud-based versions of these PSP collections on the Switch until the Switch gets a boost in power, like a Switch Pro. Whenever that may or may not happen, maybe we won't see that. But I don't know.
Technically exists for Third Strike Online Edition as well as MK9.
What do you mean?
You can play like Third Strike Online Edition on your PS5. It's a cloud version. So, and
how do I not know this?
You can also play MK9 on like your PS4. Maybe
is
your
this
PS5.
on like PlayStation Now?
Yes.
That's it. That's why I've never heard of it.
Exactly. You can play classic PlayStation games, but they're practically like they're being streamed type of things.
Yeah, no, that's not good.
They're not natively available.
Streaming's the future, you guys.
No, for fighting games especially. For sure.
Bro, imagine you're playing and you're like, oh, this is cool. And all of a sudden, just like everything just gets pixelated. Like you go down from 1080 to 480. And I'm like, bro, what's happening? You can't even play it anymore.
You know, you have to adapt. You have to adapt to the 480 downscale.
They're going to run EVO online tournaments for this. This is how you qualify for the grand finals of EVO from now on. Is cloud streaming fighting game tournaments.
It's like in Skullgirls. It's like in Skullgirls where Valentine gives you input delay.
They're going to claim in the same way that you had to get used to weird arcade hardware in random arcade places, you'll have to get used to this shit.
The cloud.
The cloud.
I think the only other thing I'd want to see is like, I've mentioned it before, but a Bloody Roar collection, I think would sell.
Of course, yeah.
It doesn't it doesn't have to be super elaborate, but if Konami put out this great TMNT collection, then that's awesome. Okay. Hopefully it does really well and they might go back to, because they have released like the Castlevania.
There is a brain in that skull somewhere.
I don't know where it is. I don't know if it's working all the time, but Bloody Roar is like the one last thing I'd like to see. And I wouldn't mind like a brand new Dead or Alive collection, because I don't know what it is. Whenever I think about like particularly old Dead or Alive games, like I want to play Dead or Alive 2 specifically online again, because I remember that game being so fucking hype with the tag combos and the stage transitions. I know that's been in the other games since then, but there's something about Dead or Alive 2 where I have like really high nostalgic memories of playing that in the arcades, and I like to play that again in like a new form. But
you technically could. Because
with streaming?
Not with streaming. Not with streaming. But with there's been a lot of crazy developments on the Fightcade end with Dreamcast games, and people have played a lot of like Virtua Fighter 3 TB online through that version of Fightcade. And guess what?
Why?
For all the issues that 3D game
TB.
3D fighting game developers say that why rollback cannot work in 3D like full 360. Like rollback does not work. It doesn't work in this situation. No, it totally does actually. No, it is great. People playing Soul Calibur 1 online, people playing Virtua Fighter 3 TB, and I almost guarantee you DOA 2 probably is the same thing. Where if people want to play it online, it can be played on Fightcade.
Yeah, okay. I think their next step is going to be PlayStation 1. So when that happens, that's another like area of just like, oh my god, there's too many games, more games now, right?
Bloody Roar 2 online.
Yeah, because that's right now you can't do it, I don't think, like at all. Like, but yeah, that'd be great for the 3D PlayStation games again. There, finally, BioFreaks online. You know, it can happen, Max. It can happen between you and me. I thought his screen froze because he moved so little.
Well, okay, what about the one that's probably the most impossible collection of all? Is a Smash Brothers collection.
Oh, that's never gonna happen. Oh my.
Like just the N64 and a Melee and just call it a day. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they could do. It's not like Nintendo's not made collections before. If they hadn't in the last couple of years, I'm like, But do you think that's just because Sakurai and Nintendo are like, no, latest version of Smash is the only Smash?
I think it's because like there's a lot of really technical reasons and a lot of like good reasons, like characters and stuff like that. But I think what it really boils down to is like Nintendo and a lot of people there absolutely hate that they played their games competitively and want to prevent that from happening in any way. So re-releasing Melee will never happen.
That on a fundamental level, that makes no sense to me because it's against the like MO of every company, which is, but people will pay money. It shouldn't matter if they care about that. They don't care about money?
No, I don't believe that. Hilariously don't. Like, it's very weird. Like, they're the one company that doesn't give a shit about money, or else there would have been 2 more Mario Kart games instead of Mario Kart 8 still being a thing.
Oh, that's true. You're right. It's been a while since Mario Kart. But
they release all those DLC packs though for the thing, so that's still
like
getting
8
money.
years later.
8 years later, it's true.
And it's shockingly just rehashes of old stages, and it's really not that expensive. It's like if Nintendo loved money, right? Nintendo would have definitely had done several different things with several different franchises that would have been guaranteed moneymakers. But Nintendo doesn't do that. They have too much pride.
Yeah, it's just your pride is getting in the way of money. Like, we could have an urban champion collection by now if they really wanted to. That's their other big fighting game franchise. Or they could have worked out a deal with Microsoft to bring KI to the Switch, like a whole KI collection. It'd be nice to have a full package, not all separated on different SKUs for KI1, KI2, KI Gold, KI Game Boy.
Yeah, KI Game Boy.
You re-release that fucking cartridge that one of the Stamper brothers has of KI2 Super Nintendo, and you get KI 2013 with all of the DLC, all the characters in there. Like, okay. I'm surprised it took us that long to bring it back to KI, because we mentioned KI at least 3 times per episode. So, all right.
The end. We are waiting for the Dark Souls of fighting games. Let us have it. We're ready.
Soul Edge has nothing on a lightsaber. Like, I'm sorry.
James Earl Jones comes back.
No.
Oh no. Oh.
I don't think kids trade games anymore. I need that sense of accomplishment, and it wasn't there. And I think that was a major flaw.
The way they engineer these is just phenomenal.
As much as you're into like the comics, I was very into the toys, so I was on like the message board all the time.